As Ashley just noted, she is starting the recording, so we are recording the session. It will be posted on the grant webpage following this meeting. Not immediately, but within the next day or so, it'll be up on that webpage. Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate your time and your interest in our program. We have about 90 people registered, and it's awesome to see that kind of an outpouring for this grant program. We all know that you have good projects. We're looking forward to hearing from you on the call today. As we get moving, just a quick note, please do remain muted throughout the meeting. If you have a question, please post your question to the chat. It's going to be difficult for us to just have an open question session given the number of people who are on the call. So we appreciate you posting to the chat. My colleague, Patrick Stenshorn with Erie Canalway is monitoring the chat. At the conclusion, once Ashley and Sasha from New York State Canal Corporation and the New York Power Authority, once we're finished presenting the program guide, we will open up the question period and we'll start to answer those questions at that point. So let me see here. All right, I just mentioned Sasha. So Sasha, do you want to take a moment, please, and introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce Erie Canalway's my colleagues from Erie Canalway.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sasha Del Perel. I am the trail manager at the Canal Corporation, and I'm also a member of the Reimagine the Canals team. Nice to see
Thank you,
everyone.
Sasha. And I want to just note that this is a collaborative partnership between the New York State Canal Corporation and Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor. We are incredibly grateful to the Canal Corporation and the New York Power Authority for this program. It's a wonderful opportunity to showcase partnership and our commitment to the corridor and enhancing all of your projects and communities. So thank you, New York State Canal Corporation, Angela and Chandler, and others from the corporation who are also involved. We appreciate this relationship. Ashley, I'll ask you to introduce yourself, and then I'll ask Patrick. And then Patrick, just go ahead and introduce yourself after Ashley, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Ashley Quimby Simone, and I run the events category of the grant program, and I'm a program manager at Erie Canalway.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many familiar faces on here. I am Patrick Stenshorn. I am the Education Program Manager for Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor.
Thank you, Patrick. And Patrick will be monitoring the chat session this morning. So just as a reminder for those of you who have just joined, please do post your questions to this chat session at any time. Patrick will pose those questions to us following our presentations. So we're going to start out today. Sasha will begin by going over the general program goals, the high-level program goals, and take us through our front-end pieces. Ashley will take us through the events side of things. I will take us through the tourism and infrastructure side of things, and then we'll open it up for questions. And finally, I am Andy Kitzman. I am the Assistant Director with Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor, and I manage the tourism, infrastructure, and amenities side of the grant program. All right, without further ado, Sasha, would you like to lead us off? And I'm going to share my screen so that y'all can see it. Sorry, Sasha.
No.
These are always a moving target, you know, lots of people, lots of coordination.
Great.
Okay.
So thank you, everyone, for your interest in the New York State Canal System Tourism, Infrastructure, and Events grants. As Andy mentioned, this is a partnership program between the New York State Canal Corporation and Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor, and the intent is to offer competitive grant funding that supports tourism and recreation along the New York State Canal system. That's both the waterway and the trail. The program prioritizes support for tourism infrastructure and amenities improvements, as well as events, as kind of identified in the naming of the grant programs. Funding is open to counties, municipalities, units of local government, not-for-profit organizations, and federally recognized Native American tribes. And for a little bit of background, the Tourism Infrastructure Grant is intended from our perspective, to capture small improvements that would traditionally fall below the threshold of the Canalway grant program that's administered through the Canal Corporation, and that's administered through the state CFA process. The grant program, that grant program has a minimum funding amount of $25,000 and a maximum of $150,000. And those projects must be capital improvement projects. So we recognize that there's a lot of small projects that communities and not-for-profits have, and we wanted to remove the big dollar amount, and also the requirement that these be capital projects. And that means that communities could use the funding to purchase equipment or pay for contracted services and also undertake restorative projects. So again, the goal here is to support small scale capital projects and acquisition of equipment and amenities that enhance tourism, recreational assets, and also encourage overnight stays. We understand that small projects can have a big impact for communities and also help enhance visitor experiences and also the experience of residents. And then for the events and festivals program, the focus here is on supporting public events and festivals that encourage the exploration and enjoyment of the cultural, natural, and recreational offerings of the Canal Corridor, while also being accessible to people of different backgrounds, ages, and abilities. I want to just note that in the past, the Canal Corporation has also had other pots of money for interested parties that were hosting events or predominantly hosting events that they would come to us asking for sponsorship money. The last 2 years, Canal Corporation has put all of our sponsorship money into this program in order to create a more competitive process. So our money for events is in this program. So if you're applying for an event, this is where you're going to get it. You're not going to get it from the Canal Corporation by other means. We do still have funding for conferences, so that's separate. And you can always reach out to me if you have a conference coming up that you're organizing. Ashley will cover the events requirements and eligibility criteria. So I'll move on from that. Applications for both programs need to demonstrate how they will achieve one or more of the program objectives. And those program objectives are to facilitate recreation and/or tourism, enhance visitor amenities and/or improve the visitor experience. Andy's scrolling up. I mean, this is all included in the program guide, but I'll still cover it. Encourage overnight stays, commemorate the history, heritage, or culture of the canals, make recreation and tourism assets more accessible for all ages and abilities, and expand audiences served. And lastly, improve and/or promote connectivity between recreation areas and communities or between waterways and land trails. There's also the timeline. The applications have been open since January 8th. The applications are due February 23rd, and we will award in early April. A slight change from last year is that any questions that we receive about the grant programs, we are posting on the grant webpage so that interested parties can view questions and our responses to them. We want to be as transparent as possible, not giving anyone any advantages, not that that's necessarily what happens with the question and answer, but just so that people can see other questions that have come in and potentially save them some time and us as well. So that's what I have. Andy and Ashley, I'll pass it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. Sasha, just to note, folks, too, that we will post the link to the questions in the chat so that you'll have access to that. And then you can find that also on our website on the web landing page for the grants program. It is in the left-hand side in the top third of the page. It is this, if you click this link right here, it will take you right to here. So we'll have a couple of ways for you to access those questions. Any questions that are posed today will also be uploaded to this list later this week. So with that, Ashley, I'm going to turn it over to you. And would you like me to just scroll for you, or do you want to share your screen, Ashley?
Andy, I'll share my screen because I'm going to pop open the application before or right after I go over some basic information. So we're going to start with talking about the event side of the grant program. Sasha did a really great job at covering the synopsis of what the goals and objectives are of the program. The events side of things is open to municipalities, units of local government, Native American tribes, and not-for-profit organizations located within the bounds of the Erie Canal National Heritage Corridor. And the funding range for events is $500 to $3,000. So you'll see a question on the application that allows you to put in your requested funding, and it must be within that range. We don't ask for a detailed budget in the application, which you'll notice years prior we have, but since we reduced the funding range a couple of years ago, we don't ask for a detailed budget, but you will see questions in the application that reference your intended uses of funds. So please check the program guide to be sure that your intended uses of funds are eligible. A reminder too that all awarded money must be matched dollar for dollar by other non-federal sources of money or volunteer time. And you'll be asked to submit a report at the end of your event. So after your money has been awarded, you'll be asked to fill out a report that documents that match and shows your uses of funds, and you'll be asked to submit receipts and photos of your event. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to go through the application quickly so that we can talk about any technical questions. So when you log into the grants platform, if you have applied to the program before, you're going to use the login that you've created years prior. If you're a new applicant, you'll create a login to the grants platform, and then you'll be directed to select from either the tourism, infrastructure, and amenities application or the events application. And Andy's going to review tourism, infrastructure, and amenities in just a minute, but I'm going to start with events. So we'll click into the application here. And the first thing you'll be asked to do is just name your application. Typically, people name that with what the name of their event is going to be. And then you'll see 3 tabs up here at the top of the application. The first is going to be some general information about your organization. So you'll see things like website, address, city, state, zip. And then we ask for some more information about political districts. And we do provide links here so that you can easily find your political districts as well. Once we get into event contacts, we have a place for you to put your main point of contact. So that's the person that I will be corresponding with day to day if you're awarded. So this may be the person who serves as kind of the liaison between us and your event organization. But then we also have a place for you to put in your legally authorized representative's name. This is the person's name who's going to appear on the contract. So this may be the same person as your main point of contact, and it may be someone different. So we like to give the opportunity to put 2 different names here if that's needed. New for this year, if you are awarded, we'd like to know who to make your check payable to, because sometimes that is a different organization than the one that you may be applying with. Or there may be multiple partner organizations, so we need to know who to make that check out to, and then the address that you'd like your check sent to as well. So all this is pretty straightforward. The next tab after you fill out all of that information is going to be all the info that's specific to your event. Actually, backing up, one thing that I wanted to note too is that you can start your application and save it without finishing. So if you need to come back to your application multiple times throughout the application period before submitting, you can do that. Just make sure you save your application at the bottom. You'll see a button to save once you have started filling things out. So here's where we're going to ask for more details, and this is going to be the bulk of what our selection committee is going to be reviewing once you've submitted your application. So you'll see things like your event name, the amount requested, as I mentioned before, the event website. So this is where information about your event is going to go. It's important to have this link because not only will we use that when we announce the awards, but we also promote all of these events that are going on across the corridor on our website and on New York State Canal Corporation's website. So please be sure to have a link to where we can find more information about your event when that takes place. We also ask for an event summary. Later in the application, a little bit farther down, you'll be asked to provide a promotional description, and that will be around some of the questions that relate to your target audience and your marketing plan. The event summary is just a brief summary of your event that will be used only for the purposes of the grants application only. The promotional description will be used as a way for us to help promote your event to our audience as well. So that's the difference between those two things. We often get questions about what's the difference. Event summary is for internal purposes only, so it's only for the review committee. The promotional description is what we will use on our website and in our e-news to promote your event. The other thing that you'll see here is your event dates. Now we always have a number of events that are either part of a series, take place on multiple weekends. Some events only take place on one day and at one location. If that's the case, you'll click My Event Takes Place on one day only. If not, you'll click My Event Takes Place on multiple days and multiple locations. Once you do that, it will open up a box grid that will allow you to put in the date, location, and the town or city that your event will be happening in. This is really important that you provide as much detail in that grid as possible, because that's what we'll use again to promote your event, but it also gives our selection committee a better understanding of the actual dates and locations where your event will take place. So please provide as much information there as possible. There will also be a spot for you to put notes about the date and location of your event as well. So if you need to, you can provide additional details in that notes section. As I mentioned earlier, there's also questions here about uses of awarded funds, the total cost of your event, what your sources of matching funds will be, and then your promotional description. There's also a place for you to check what your event type is. These are corresponding to the objectives and the event categories that are in the program guide. So make sure you familiarize yourself with the program guide before you start your application. And then we ask for a brief description about how your event helps achieve the program objectives. A little farther down, you'll start to get into questions about your target audience, your marketing plan, and fees. We always get questions about events that charge fees. And we do allow events that charge fees to be funded through this program. However, we do say that the fees must be reasonable. And what that means is kind of two things. One, that it must be reasonable in terms of how much your event will cost somebody versus what they will receive from the experience in turn. And two, it must be reasonable in terms that it has to be affordable to a wide number of people. So we're really looking for events that are accessible to everybody, not only obviously from an accessibility for people with disabilities standpoint, but also accessibility in terms of affordability as well. So that's what we mean by a reasonable fee. And then there's a few other questions after that. And at the very bottom, you'll be prompted to upload a W-9 form. And I just want to note here too, that if you fail to submit a completed W-9 form, it may affect your organization's eligibility for the program. So we'll consider any organization that has an incomplete W-9, we'll consider their application to be incomplete, and therefore may not even make it to the review committee. So please be sure that your W-9 that you upload is completed and fully filled out when you upload it. You will not be able to submit an application unless you select a file and upload it here. But I will be checking all of the applications for completed W-9s before they even make it to the selection committee. So please be sure to fill that out completely. And that is all that I had to go over in terms of the application. Everybody, please, if you don't mind dropping your questions into the chat box. And we will get to them at the end, but for now I'm going to have turn things over to Andy, and he will go through the tourism infrastructure and amenities side of the program.
Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate your going through that thoroughly. I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to work through the program guide itself. There are some areas in there that I'd like to highlight. There's some changes this year. And there's a few things that I just wanted to note as we go through the program guide. I will then shift over to the application and just show a couple of specific items in the application itself. It's a lot more complex. It's a little bit longer than the events. So please, if you have questions about the tourism infrastructure amenities application, please post them in the chat and I will address them there. This side of the program supports capital improvement projects and acquisition of equipment, amenities that enhance tourism, especially overnight stays and recreational assets along the New York State Canal system. And again, this is, as Sasha noted, this is a program that's designed to fill that gap between the larger CFA program that New York State Canal Corporation offers, making these projects eligible in a different way, and continuing to enhance improvements along the canal system. The program categories, so as you're thinking about your project, as you're thinking about your program, please do reference these, because these are how we think about these projects when we receive applications. These are not hard, fast examples as I go through them. So think about your project and how it relates to some of the things that are identified here. So construction and improvement of recreational assets, including trails, parking areas, accessible boat launches, docks, storage facilities, rest stops, meaning rest stops on the trail, and amenities such as permanent outdoor public art, plazas, gardens, or amphitheaters. And just a quick note there, the word outdoor is important. We do not consider applications for internal inside exhibitions at museums, historical societies, interior improvements. These really need to be projects that are focused on the trail, the canal system, main streets, things like that. So purchase of installation of equipment, machinery, and materials to enhance the visitor experience. So that's your lens there. Bike racks, potable water, maintenance equipment, restrooms, porta-johns, showers, benches, Wi-Fi, and security upgrades. Some of these things, as you're thinking about these, are probably more competitive if they're packaged into a larger application rather than a single ask. Purchase and installation of wayfinding signage on non-Canal Corporation property only. That's one of our changes this year. So on any property, any trail, part of the trail that is owned by New York State Canal Corporation, wayfinding signages, and that also includes interpretive signs, any kind of other signage, are not eligible for this grant program. And I just wanted to make one other note, and that is think carefully about your signage projects if that's what you want to apply for off Canal Corporation property. Both Erie Canalway and Canal Corporation recognize there are a ton of different signs out there. There's a ton of different designs, quality of signs, and maintenance. So we look very hard and carefully at sign requests when they come in. Repair and restoration of existing waterway and trail features or amenities. preservation and restoration, preservation, rehabilitation, or enhancement of canal-specific historic, cultural, or natural resources. So this gets more into the historic preservation side of things. Enhancements or equipment to improve access to the canal system, visitor centers, canal-related tourism sites, and contracted services. Again, we noted some of these earlier, but again, in thinking about contracted services, these are stronger applications if they're rolled into a different, into a larger request. And then one quick note about maintenance crews. This is not funding for maintenance crews on a long-term basis. It needs to be project specific and have a specific reason or goal. And then salary. We do, in this particular side of the grant program, we do allow up to 10% admin costs. In other words, a de minimis or soft cost that you can collect. It is not in addition to your grant program, so it needs to be part of your project budget. We don't go over $24,000. So it needs to be included within that. If you are using your staff time as match, that de minimis is not eligible. And I'm happy to talk about that more in the comment section. So some eligibility criteria, and again, please listen carefully because some of our eligibility criteria for this side of the program has changed. These don't necessarily apply to the event side. So counties, municipalities, units of local government, not-for-profits, federally recognized Native American tribes located within the National Heritage Corridor. And then the change here is that applications for infrastructure projects located on land owned by the Canal Corporation are open only to federal, state, and local government applicants. If you're a not-for-profit and you have a current use and occupancy permit, you are eligible. If your intention is to get a use and occupancy permit as part of your application after the fact, you are not eligible. So please note that change. Applicant must include a resolution or other clear and strong documentation from your leadership. And again, just a quick note here. If you are a mayor, please make sure that your trustees are aware. We've had instances where trustees were not aware when a mayor or someone else in a high authority submitted an application, and it does often cause some complications. So please make sure everybody's in the loop. The Canal Corporation and these grants in particular as well are subject to the state's Smart Growth Public Infrastructure Act. Patrick is going to post a link to that in the website. And just as a quick reference, and I know we have some colleagues from DOS on the call today, so thank you for joining us, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But the law requires right here, this is on their website, the law requires state agencies to review the projects through the lens of the principles of smart growth. Specifically, this is to avoid sprawl and that sustainable land use outcomes are included. There's a whole slew of other things that fall into this. So please do familiarize yourself with those. Ineligible uses of funds are pretty straightforward. For those of you who are grant writers, et cetera, there shouldn't be many surprises here. Continuation of projects funded in prior grant rounds, I will call out. So if you got funding for a way stop on the trail last year, you would need to have something substantially different from that way stop to be eligible, not a continuation of that way stop project. Indirect costs, existing debt, real property, we don't include. Political or religious activities are not allowed. This is state and federal money that is included here, so we have some regulations and rules there. Endowments, I've already noted the wayfinding. And then general organizational marketing, you can request for your project specifically, but not for larger projects. Websites are important for tourism, but we don't fund website development, new website development. Projects or programs that will re-grant the funds, and then festival or events. If you have a festival or event, please apply to Ashley's program. Please don't, try to put a larger request into tourism infrastructure and a smaller request into the event side of things. You won't be considered through this particular program side of the funding. Matching, like Ashley's program, we are $1 for dollar. So if you put in a $5,000 request, it needs to be matched $5,000 with funding that is from a variety of sources. The only thing that really you need to be aware of is please do not use New York State Canal Corporation's CFA funding as part of your match. We do also include in-kind match, and that can be a variety of things. The thing to note here is for those of you who do use in-kind match, volunteers in particular, go to this value of volunteer time. This is the link that we use for our multiplier, the dollar multiplier. And it's a pretty high multiplier for New York. So, if you're estimating $15 an hour, this is going to be a lot higher. So please do use this. And then unacceptable matches, again, are pretty straightforward. Operating costs, routine repair and maintenance, etc. Ownership, the applicant must identify who the current owner and maintainer of the project site is. And frankly, you need to be the owner. So we need to have documentation that you own the site. There are some historic preservation compliances that you need to be aware of. We will submit these projects to the state, to the Canal Corporation's permitting office. That will trigger a SHPO review of your project, and your project may also end up having Army Corps reviews and other things. If you want to put footers in for an accessible dock, you're going through Army Corps, so please be aware of that. So I talked about that a little bit here. So permits, again, we've had some confusion in the past on permits, so I wanted to clarify a little bit. There are 2 permits that you will need for this project if your project is taking place on New York State Canal Corporation land. The first is a use and occupancy permit. A lot of you have those. A lot of them are, you've had them for 20 years. That does not give you the authorization to actually implement your project. If you have a use and occupancy permit, you want to put a dock in, you will have to get a work permit as well from the New York State Canal Corporation, and that is project specific. So please be aware of that. Please review that. And then there is a time frame on that. So it takes 4 weeks for review and some other activities involved. Just to circle back to Army Corps and also the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, if your project disturbs below high water mean on the canal bank, it will need a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permit, as well as a New York State DEC permit. And those are secured concurrently through the same process. They are long processes. It can take up to 18 months to get your permit. So please take that into consideration as you're thinking about your project. Insurance, please be aware of our insurance requirements. Design guidelines and artwork approval. I touched on this earlier, but in terms of interpretive signs, this also relates to murals, etc. If you're funded for a mural, or if you're funded for an interpretive sign or a wayfinding sign, you may not go to final print without written permission from us. We have to review your project. We know that you love to run your projects. We know you know your story. We know you know your design standards, but we have design standards that we need to meet, and we need to take a look at these before they go public. So please be aware of that if that's what you're thinking about. Interim and final reporting. These are longer projects. They're 2 years and more. So there are interim and final reporting requirements. And I wanted to note one thing here in terms of contracting too. If you're awarded, because of the length of time for Army Corps permitting requirements, we will negotiate a time frame with you if your project looks like it's going to need Army Corps reviews, because we recognize that it's going to take longer than 2 years. So just note that there is some flexibility in the time frame. That said, if you can get your project done in 8 months, we want to do that, because we want to get these things published. We want to get them out there. So please don't stretch your project out or try to stretch your project out just because there is some flexibility. And I mentioned that here. So that is that. I'm going to jump over to my application very quickly. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just going to touch on two things, and then we'll open it up for questions. So the first thing is the project budget. And my program works the same as Ashley's in terms of how you navigate it. But getting down here to the budget, for those of you who've submitted in the past, this should be standard. But there are directions right here. We require a budget template. We want you to use this template, please. You upload it here. Please save it to your computer and then re-upload it when you submit it. Please don't open it up and try to fill it in. It won't save for you. You have to download it to your computer. And I'm happy to walk anybody through that needs help. The other thing that I wanted to note, and this is really just more clarification, you're going to see two categories for attachments, one for municipal attachments, one for not-for-profit attachments. If you are a Native American community, please use the not-for-profit attachments, and we can go from there. When I open them up, you're going to notice that each one of them has this optional notation. So if you're a municipality and I'm asking for your most recent management discussion and analysis, and it says optional, you have to upload it. The reason why it says optional is because if I make this required and you click no, you're not going to be able to submit your application. So this is simply just an administrative piece on my end so that we can allow you to advance your application. I'm sorry for the confusion on that. I've heard about it, but at this point with our file program, we don't have a workaround on that. So please note that these are required, even though that optional note is there. So I am going to stop there. It is 10:38. I know that a couple of my colleagues do need to have a hard stop at 11 o'clock. I can probably stay on a little bit longer if we need to. But Patrick, why don't we, unless Ashley or Sasha, do either of you have anything else to add at this point?
I don't. I think we're ready to get into some questions.
Great, thank you.
All right. So if any other questions, please continue to type them into the chat, and I will keep copying them and reading them off as they come in. I'm going to start with a couple more general questions that maybe any of the three of you could answer. One came in through email, so it's not in the chat, but it has to do with eligibility for sites that might be along the old Erie as opposed to the barge canal. So are places along the old Erie Canal alignment that have canal remnants, historical alignment, paved as roadways, and recreational reuse of the towpath as a multi-use trail considered as part of the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor and eligible for funding. And I'm going to add in a second part before anybody answers that. Are segments of the canal remnants with no water in them that are bordered by paved towpath or heel path or multi-use trail qualify as quote unquote canal resources?
So our measure, I'll go ahead and answer this, and then Sasha and Ashley, please weigh in. Our measure, and I'm looking for, here's our corridor map. The measure that you want to use is the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor's map. We have a distinct boundary line, and you can find it here on our website. These are the municipal boundaries of those communities that touch the canal system. It goes up to Fort Anne. It includes both the Cayuga and Seneca Lakes. It includes the Old Erie Canal State Park and what we call historic alignments. So any of those would be eligible as long as they're within this boundary. And we'll post this. I'll send this link to Patrick, and we can post this as well. Actually, I'll just put it up right now.
Sure.
Pat, go ahead.
Another general question, a couple general questions. One, is there a list of types of projects that have been funded by this grant in the past? And part two of the question is, how is affordability, Ashley, I think this part goes to you. How is affordability determined? I think that's in relation to like the cost of an event or a festival.
Okay, so we do have obviously lists of prior awardees for the grants program. If that's something that people are interested in seeing, we can post those to the QA section of the website. So we'll make sure to do that following today's meeting. And then in terms of affordability is measured kind of in two ways. One is it affordable to the general public? So thinking about everybody when you're considering what your event fee is going to be. We're really looking for, as Sasha stated at the very beginning of the meeting today, we're looking for events that are widely available to the public and make the canal more accessible for everybody. So although I don't have like a definitive dollar amount, that's really what we're looking for. And we will gauge your fee against what somebody would receive in the experience of your event. So the more you give people when they register for your event, the higher you can charge for your fee, while also keeping in mind that we're really looking for events that are widely available to the public.
One more general before I move into more events or infrastructure. Regarding the match, if there's funding already secured, can that be used as a match, or is it only matching funds that are raised as part of the project?
I can take this, Ashley, and then follow, and then you can follow on.
Sure. Yep.
So in terms of your match source, absolutely. If you have secured resources that are specific to this project, and those are secured, absolutely use them as match. And that can be, and that can also be, organizational cash or whatever. But if you have a grant, absolutely, please do that. That's your best match right there. You're showing buy-in from other organizations for your project. So I would just leave it at that. And then Ashley, did you have anything to follow on?
Yeah, for events, same thing as Andy said. Absolutely. If you already have a grant, then that absolutely applies as match. Sponsorships from other organizations too also work for events. So if you have sponsorships that you've secured from private companies, those also work as match for events as well.
And I wanted to note. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Patrick.
Nope,
go ahead.
nope,
I'm done.
Go ahead.
You're good.
Okay, so we're going to move on to a couple for Ashley here for the event side, and there were two that were along the same lines. Can one organization apply for more than one event or do they only request for one event if they're organizing multiple in the year?
Yes, you can apply for multiple events, but it is up to the discretion of the selection committee whether both of your events get funded, obviously. And it's also up to the discretion of the selection committee how much your event gets funded. So if you request the max for both events that you're applying for, the selection committee may come back and say, we can't do $3,000, but we can do $1,500 for both, or we can do $3,000 for one or $2,000 for this. So it's really up to our selection committee how much each event gets funded for, and if both or one or none of your events get funded as well. So keep all of that in mind as you submit your applications.
Andy,
I just want to make a quick note. We have had applicants apply for if there's an event that is a series or it roams from one location to another, that would be definitely an application that can come in as one. If it's two separate events coming from an organization or municipality, I would say you should apply with two separate applications, not fold in two events into one.
That's a great thing to note, Sasha. That I'm glad you mentioned that. So, like, to give an example of what Sasha is talking about, if you have like a concert series that happens multiple times throughout the summer at the same location, or even at multiple locations, that concert series should be applied for as one event. If you have a concert series plus, you know, a separate event that has nothing to do with that, you can apply as two separate events. That's just one example. But if you have, you know, specific questions, please be sure to either drop them in the chat or submit them to my email, and we will get them posted and the answers posted up on the website as well.
Andy, a few for the infrastructure side. One, we're planning to apply to beautify or program the tender we were given. We would like to include an interpretive sign or two about the different types of canal boats and uses. Would that be eligible? We would request Canal Corp and ECNHC review of content and design.
Those would be eligible, and we do have design guidelines that you would need to use for those, as long as they're exterior. We don't fund internal exhibit pieces.
Andy again, does the management document in the municipal attachment section refer to their most recent audited financials, or are you looking for something else?
Is that the municipal question? I'm sorry, is that for municipalities?
Yes,
Yeah.
for municipalities, the management document that you
Yeah.
referred to.
The management, so the management discussion letter is a document that is produced because municipalities often have really large financial documents, especially if it's a city. They can have 400 plus pages of financials. We don't want that. that's too much. But municipalities and other institutions often have a management discussion on a monthly basis or a bi-monthly basis. And that is recorded and documented, and those discussion letters summarize the financial position of the organization, of the municipality. That is what we're after. And it is required. We do need to have some kind of understanding of your financial position that's appropriate. And you don't audit management discussion letters, but they are grounded in your finances that are eventually audited. So we're comfortable with that.
Andy, you addressed this one, but it'll be good to sort of go back to it. Would a permanent interactive exhibit that promotes the canal's history at a museum and visitor center qualify under the tourism and infrastructure grant?
Yeah, I've said they have to be outside. So I think you'd need to think about how that could be an external exhibition. And, I'm a museum person. That's my background. So I would say be creative in how you think about that. But we do not fund internal exhibits. So please be aware of that.
That is the last question that is currently in the chat box. Certainly, if anybody else has any other questions that haven't been addressed, type them in and I'll read them off, or I'll let Andy or Ashley or Sasha if you have any other additional comments that you'd like to share while we wait.
Ashley, if you have anything, I was going to open up the question list and I'll just zip through it real quick, if that's okay with it, since we've got 10 minutes left, and then please continue to post to the link. So let me get this open and you guys.
I'm also dropping my email and Andy's email address in the chat box right now. So if you have any questions following today's meeting, please submit them via email to either one of us, depending on which category you're planning to apply for.
So I do know I can state one question that came in that I don't think it made it to our list yet is eligibility of state parks and whether or not the state park should submit directly or the Friends group should submit. And I guess my response to that is the Friends group is probably your best approach, simply because the Friends group is going to be a nonprofit. And it makes the contracting and everything else a little easier to navigate. Whether a state park as a state entity would be eligible, I don't know. I would actually want to get some more clarification on that, but I do know that question was asked. But friends groups are absolutely eligible. So let's see. I'm just looking for some that would be more general here. So we've talked about event fees. So this question, training for staff on how to make an event more inclusive to people with disabilities. One of our main priorities here is accessibility to the Canal system. Anything we can do to create accessibility for all users is a high goal for us. So in this case, it would qualify if it's directly related to your event. So, if there's a specific need, if there's a specific way that it relates to your event, that works. Talked about that one. My event is being hosted with a partner organization. Ashley, I think this was for you. Did you want to touch on this one? My event is being hosted with a partner organization. Which one of us should be the lead application?
Yeah. So if there's a place in the event application for you to list all of the partner organizations for a specific event, so make sure that obviously that list is comprehensive, but if you're like hosting an event with another partner, I would just say check the program guide for eligibility requirements for organizations when you're applying, so that way your lead applicant is an eligible organization. If both hosts are considered eligible, then I would use the lead applicant should be the person that you would want to, or the organization that you would want to receive the check, because that's who the check will need to be made out to. And that's the organization that will also be listed on your contract as well. So when you're kind of deciding who should be the lead applicant, those would be the things I would take into consideration.
General question here. Are you able to apply for both event and infrastructure grants, or are you limited to one or the other? Yes, please submit to both if you have a qualifying project. That is absolutely not taken into account against you. And we consider these and evaluate these separately. So this is a question about engineering. Engineering is eligible. It doesn't say it in the program guides, but I would keep your eligibility to no more than, or your engineering and design fees to no more than 20% of your request to us. And that is really because we are looking for projects that are going to be completed soon. These are small grants, small projects for the most part, so we want to get them up and running. But we do also recognize that there is some design work. If this is initial design, if you're in your feasibility stage, this is probably not the right program for you. Oh, there's the State Historic Site grant. Somebody asked about an event happening in April. Ashley, did you want to discuss that?
Yeah, we've gotten a couple questions about events that happen in early April, or even at the end of March, which predates Canal season. We're going to be making our award notifications at some point in April. We don't know the exact date of when we will make that public yet. As we close out the applications and our committees begin to deliberate, we'll have a more solidified date to let everybody know by. But April 8th is probably too early to both know if you received a grant funding and to provide the proper sponsorship recognition that's needed within the requirements of the grant program. So April 8th is probably a little bit too soon for this grants program. But I'm sure that there are other programs out there that you may be able to apply for. This one, you just won't be able to know in time for the cycle. I should also mention that all of the events need to take place within the 2024 season as well. So any event that will take place after 2024 is ineligible.
Thank you. All right, so there are 4 minutes left in our hour here. As a reminder, we will post these questions that were in the chat here on this website as well, so you'll be able to reference them. Please do continue to email your questions to us. If you have more, we will continue to post them on Fridays as they're received throughout the open grant period. So please do email those to us. We are not able to talk to you about your project. So please don't be disappointed if we say you got to submit it in an email. We understand, and we know you're excited about your project, but please do email those to either Ashley or me, and we will get those up as quickly as we can. So thank you for your patience on that. As a reminder, this is a recorded session. It will be posted on our website. And I'm not sure if we said this on the front end, but I did want to note we will be distributing up to $190,000 between these two programs. There is not a line between events and the tourism infrastructure that defines how much goes into either one. It's really sort of based on your applications and the quality of the proposals that we receive. So, so please do keep that in mind. Once again, thank you to Sasha and to the New York State Canal Corporation for your partnership in this project. We are very grateful.
Andy,
Yes.
we did get one more question. So can I cut you off before you do your final wrap up? It will be for kind of both of you to address.
Okay.
The location is applying for an events grant and an infrastructure grant using different entities making the request. Would one jeopardize the other?
Shouldn't. No.
Okay. I just wanted to get it in before you did your final wrap up there. So sorry for
I'm glad.
cutting you off.
Well, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through all that again. So I'm kidding. Ashley or Sasha, do either of you have anything before we wrap up?
No.
Okay. Please do continue to email questions. We look forward to your applications, and thank you for continuing to champion the Erie Canalway, the Erie Canal, the New York State Canal Corporation as valuable parts of our infrastructure as we look into our third century of operations. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.